Welcome, welcome. This is the Enlightenment Show, and I'm your host, Laurie Schoenfeld. This is where Chicken Soup for the Soul meets the artist way with Nancy Drew. Our guest today is Alexandra Potter, author of Confessions of a 40-something Fuck-Up. We're going to be chatting with her today all about her new release and a midlife confession she's currently navigating. Hello, Alexandra.
Hi, hello. Sorry, I was just talking to you about trying to prop my phone up. Hello. So nice to be on the show.
I am so happy to have you joining us. And we should mention, Alexandra, what you're using your phone to hold it up.
Oh, yes, I'm using mosquito repellent. I'm here in California, and apparently they have mosquitoes now. So yeah, I've got some mosquito repellent. So I'm just kind of balancing my phone next to some mosquito go away potion.
The social life and glamour of what we do.
Yes. It's very glamorous being a novelist.
Yes, indeed. But you're prepared. So there you go.
Yes.
Let's get started. And if you can share with our listeners and viewers what Confessions of a 40-something Fuck-Up is all about.
Okay, so this novel is about the idea that we sort of get into our 30s, and we get to 40, and I personally always sort of imagined that my life would be completely sorted out by the time I was 40. And that everything would be, I would be married, I'd have children, I'd have the nice house, the great career. I'd have, fabulous recipes I could cook. Everything would be, all the boxes would be ticked. And then I hit 40 in my 40s, and I would be talking to my friends, and I'd say, I still don't know what I'm doing. My life's nothing like that. And my friends would say, mine neither. And so then I had this idea for a book about a character who hasn't ticked any of those boxes, and she feels like a bit of an F up. And we realize in the book that she's not. It's just that society has made her feel like that. And she breaks up with her fiance, her business goes bust, she moves back from America to London, and she gets a job writing obituaries. And she writes an obituary for the husband of a character called Cricket, who's in her 80s. And Cricket and the heroine of the novel, Nell, form this really unlikely friendship. And they're both starting over in their lives. And they go on sort of to discover sort of new joys. And the book is about this friendship and about how we really don't know what we're doing. We're still trying to figure it out. It's about telling it like it is. It's about being honest. And she starts, the heroine starts an anonymous podcast, which is the title of the novel. And in it, she talks about all this stuff. And I don't want to give too much away, but I think by the end, she realizes that everybody feels like she does. We all feel the same. And I think that from all the messages I've got from readers, they all feel the same too. But I kind of think no one's really talking about it, because when you look on social media, everybody's lives look perfect. And nobody's life's perfect.
Mm-hmm. I loved this book so much, and I was laughing at multiple parts because, here I just hit 40. And I also, same as you, thought at this point, like, it would be like smooth sailing.
Yeah.
And some things I'm like, okay, I think I'm navigating. And other things I'm just like, what in the world is happening right now? Like,
I know.
What is the stage? What is the space? I don't even know what I'm looking at here.
I think for me, actually, I thought I knew it all in my 20s. And as I got into my 40s, and I'm now in my 50s, I realized how little I do know. And I'm asking more questions and getting less answers. And I've realized also that it's okay not to know. It's okay. And that's actually what my character Cricket, the 80-something, says to Nell in the book. It's okay not to know, because it gives you a freedom then to try new things and sort of, there's a saying, I think it's traveling without a map, because then you discover things that you never would have discovered before.
Mm-hmm. What did you love most about creating your main character, Nell?
Oh, I love Nell so much. I love Nell because she is very real. I wanted to write a really realistic character, and I'd been writing novels for a long time, and they'd mostly been about sort of 20 somethings, early 30 somethings that were looking for the man, that they were romantic comedies. And I wanted this character, it wasn't really about that at all. She was trying to figure out her life. And I thought, I'm just going to make her super realistic. And she's very kind, is Nell. She's very warm-hearted. She beats herself up too much. She compares herself to people and she despairs. And I think that you really root for Nell. You really, I think she's a really likable character, and I think a lot of people see themselves in her. And
Mm.
I love Nell. She's become like a friend, she's like an imaginary. When I was small, I used to have imaginary characters, and here I am at 53, and I've still got these characters in my mind, and they're almost like friends now.
Mm-hmm.
I just think she's a really great character because she's out there and she's learning and she's making mistakes and she's falling down and she's getting up. And, I'm like, go now.
Mm-hmm. Cricket also was a really wonderful character as well, as she really, I feel like, gave freedom to a sense of Nell's heart. Who is someone like that in your life?
Well, it's really funny actually, because I wrote Cricket and she just completely from my imagination, I just created this character. I wanted a woman in her 80s who was vibrant and relevant and was interested and interesting, interested in life, because
Mm.
my mum is in her 80s, and that's what I saw in my mum. And my mum has friends, and they're not little old ladies, they're out there leading these really interesting lives. And so she kind of I made Cricket up. But then since I made Cricket up, I got messages from readers saying, oh, I wish I could meet a Cricket. And I said, you know what? They're out there everywhere. You've just got to look. And so since writing this character, I have looked more at older women that might feel invisible. And I've now got and taken the time to talk to them and not see. I think we feel as friendships we should be friends with people our age.
Yeah.
And so I've now got a whole range of friends that are in their 70s and 80s that I didn't have before I wrote that character, because it's sort of a bit like the fiction led the fact. I thought, I'm going to go out there and try and meet some Crickets, and I did.
Mm-hmm. I love that, because it made me think too, like, where are the Crickets in your neighborhood, or at the grocery store, like
Yes.
opening up those new conversations.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think I have some neighbors that are in their 70s, and another neighbor, and she's 90, and she's just so vibrant and fantastic, and she's out there getting groceries, and she's still teaching, and they've got really interesting stories to tell, and they've still got opinions about life. And I think as a society we have a tendency to, when people get older, make them invisible and think that they're not relevant anymore. And it's really not the case at all. And in other cultures, the elders are respected and they're wise. And it should be like that more in the West, I think.
Absolutely agree. What do you enjoy the most about writing romantic comedies?
I love writing romantic comedies. I've been writing them for about 25 years, and I was really inspired by watching Richard Curtis films in my 20s, because I loved all those films, Notting Hill, Four Weddings and a Funeral, all those type of films. And I always liked the idea of sort of throwing people together that wouldn't normally meet, sort of opposites attracting. And I always want I always loved coming out of those movies and having that really lovely uplifting feel. And it sort of took you away from real life for an hour and a half. And so I wanted to write a book that did exactly the same thing. And I just think that life can be tough, and sometimes we need to escape from life. And I really wanted to write books that, you know, the characters are relatable. They might go through a lot of stuff, but at the end, you're left with a really kind of empowering, uplifting feeling. And I think that's what romantic comedies give readers and viewers. And they kind of get a bit of a short shrift. I think, you know, you have literary fiction and, you know, prizes and stuff. But romantic comedies, you know, commercial fiction, are read by millions and millions of people around the world, and people love them. And I you know, I love reading romantic comedies, and they're really, really popular, but I think people can be quite snobby about them.
Yeah, I definitely love, at least with your book and a few others that I read, it was a whole emotional experience, which I think is very therapeutic too, as you're on this journey with Nell. You know, laughter's really good. So you're getting that relatable laughter that's like midpoint crying, but also laughing. And then also those moments of like, and oh, I feel this solidarity of like, she gets me or I get her, and we have this commonality piece about life.
Yeah. I think one of the great amazing powers of a book is that they can make you feel seen. If an author writes something that you think you are the only person that feels that way, and then you read it in a novel and you realize, you know what, I'm not the only person that feels like that. That is such a powerful thing, and you feel seen. And I think that I try and do that in the book, and I know that from the messages I've got from people that they say that, you know, I thought I was the only person that felt like that, but you've written about it. And I also think that humor is a really fantastic way of handling the really tough stuff in life. So I can write about, you know, there's some really tough themes in this book, even though it's fun and it's a romantic comedy that, you know, I deal with real stuff. And I think you can sort of talk about the really hard stuff that gives you a lump in your throat, that, you know, I talk about grief. I talk about Cricket losing her husband and how that feels. But then you can use humor. You can sort of use humor to sort of lift that then. Well, like it is in life, isn't it? You can have a moment where you're sort of on the kitchen floor, something terrible's happened, and then, you know, the next day something fantastic happens, or you laugh with your friends, you know, gallows humor. My father died, and it was terrible for me and my mum and my sister. And I remember we left the hospital, and it was just such a terrible thing. And we went and we bought a box set of The Vicar of Dibley. I don't know if you've ever seen it. So it's a television show with Dawn French. Very, very funny, because we wanted laughter. We wanted the laughter to offset the grief. And I think you can do that in a book. And that's what I try to do in this book.
Your very first line of the book had me laughing and also holding my heart of how the hell did I get here, which is a great opener, by the way, for the first page. Immediately, I'm like, okay. When was the last time that you felt that, Alexandra?
Oh, gosh, I can feel like that all the time. There can be, you know, I laughed. I think I was on a, gosh, when did I feel like that? There's been many times. I now take pictures and send them to my friends. There was a time when I was recently, and I was traveling to see my mum. She lives at the other end of the country, and I was on a train, and it was absolutely jam-packed. And I think it was exactly at the time that the television show of my book was coming out in America. And my sister lives in America, and she was sending me pictures of the billboards all around Los Angeles. It was all very glamorous. Meanwhile, I was sitting on a train that was so busy, the only place to sit was outside the toilet. And it was an automatic toilet. So it just kept opening and closing because it had like a sensor. So I was sitting there like on my suitcase, this toilet was opening and closing. And I was like, how did I get here? How did I get here? the glamorous life of a writer. It was just hilarious. So I have lots of those moments, and they're brilliant for comedy. And I use that kind of stuff a lot.
Mm-hmm. Yes. That I'm seeing the visual of you sitting on your suitcase now.
Yeah.
And juxtaposition of
Yes, it was hilarious.
as women, we are really the hardest on ourselves and have very unrealistic expectations of perfectionism. How is a way that we can be more loving to ourselves and also to other women?
I definitely think women are very tough on themselves, and I think social media hasn't helped that. I think there is a tendency to look at social media and compare yourself. It's the saying, compare and despair. And you have to remind yourself that it's someone's highlights reel. Someone's put the best stuff up there. They've chosen the best pictures. They've put the happy stuff up there, and that it's not a full picture of real life. So I think that's a huge thing. I think women generally, I know for me growing up, advertising, there'd always be pictures of like airbrushed models, which, when I was a teenager, I didn't know what airbrushing was. I thought that they really did have the perfect skin. And so, as women, adverts and commercials, just the thing about, I think I write about it in my new book, the whole thing about anti-aging, anti-aging creams and anti-aging. And Cricket says to Nell, the only anti-aging is death. I mean, we should be celebrating aging. Why are we made to feel bad about the wrinkles that we're getting? Because the wrinkles show that we're living, and it's a privilege to be alive. And so I think the sort of the society has made women be tough on each other and be tough on themselves, because it sells things. It makes you go out and buy that moisturizing cream, makes you go pay for that recipe book that tells you about the diets that you can go on to lose some weight. So it's so, and I think about, I've always been extremely supporting of other women, because I don't think it's a competition. We're not in competition with each other. And so I'm very much like, if my friends, have a project or they're doing something, I'm like, fantastic. And I have a lot of author friends, and we're always very supportive of each other, because it's not a competition. The only person that you kind of, if you want to be in competition with, is yourself. It's not anybody else.
I love how you mentioned, talking about wrinkles, and like, this is something to embrace and celebrate. It's a sign of life.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Cricket says to Nell, nobody died of cellulite and wrinkles. And it's true. But it's also, I think it's completely fine to be conflicted about that, because we all want to look nice. Everybody wants to look like their best self. It's not nice looking in the mirror and seeing that you're aging. But why is it not nice seeing that? Well, I think it's because society has made us feel bad about that. So it's all these messages that we have had going into our minds since we were little. And so to fight against that is these are deep-seated things. And it's absolutely fine, put some makeup on, do whatever you want to do. I mean, I'm not against it, Botox or plastic surgery, whatever you want to do to make yourself feel great, fine. But I don't like this this worshipping of youth, and how our best years were our 20s, and then you might live another 70 years and your best years are over. I mean, I recently did I did a panel with authors, and it was about midlife. And the person running the event said, I really don't like the word midlife. Can you think of another name to call the event? And I said, what about calling it the best is yet to come? She went, oh, I like that, because that's how I want to look at life. I want to think, the best is yet to come. This is great, and the rest's going to be great as well.
I really love how you gave us that example of like an opportunity to, Alexandra, to look in the mirror and ask, why do I feel this way? Like, get curious. Why do I think I need to look this way or feel this way? And that opens up that curiosity and investigation.
Oh, I think I've lost you. I think I've lost you there. Hello? Let's see if we can get you back. Hi.
And we're back because life just threw a curveball, but we're back.
Proves that we're live.
That's right. We needed a momentary pause to soak in that beautiful wisdom that you just shared with us. And moving into curveballs, what is something that you planned for your future self that threw you a completely different curveball?
Something that I planned for myself?
Something that you planned for your future self when you were younger that threw you a different curveball.
Gosh, what did I plan for my younger self? I think I think I'm quite boring. My younger self, I always wanted to be a writer. And so I left university and I worked on magazines, and then I got a great job on a magazine, and I was absolutely thrilled. And I'd only been in the job for 6 weeks, and the magazine folded. And so I lost my job. So that was a huge curveball for me. Mm. And because of that, I went to work in Australia. And because I went to work in Australia, I got a job at Vogue, which would never have happened for me if I'd have stayed in England. And then I came back to London, and I was working around magazines, being a sub-editor, which is a skill that I had learned in Australia. And it's because I was working as a sub-editor that I was given an article to sub, which was about 6 authors that had all written their novel before the age of 30. And I thought, I'd never really had the idea to write a novel before. And so I read their advice because I was sub-editing this article. And I took their advice and I did what they said, and I sort of had an idea, and I wrote 3 chapters and I sent it off to these agents. And I got an agent, and I wrote my first novel, and it was published. And here we are 25 years later. So that's a very long story to tell you about a kind of curveball that was thrown that took me down a different path. If I'd never have lost that job.
And if you didn't lose that job, all those open doors that
yes,
you never would have seen coming.
I do think I have a friend, and she's terrible with directions. And she always says to me, by going down the wrong path, I finally reached the right path. And it's a path that she would never have taken if she hadn't gone down the wrong path. And she, we talk about it as, if we're exploring Italy and we go down a back street and then we find something, but you can look at that in life. And I definitely think life is like that. You might think a door is closed, but it tends to be closed for a reason, because then it makes you look for another door and walk through another door. And that takes you. It's a bit like sliding doors, isn't it? Do you remember that movie?
Yeah. Yep. Like, I was thinking when you're saying sliding doors, I was thinking like chutes and ladders in my head for whatever reason. It's like you pop in a door and it takes you down a slide and it's fun and it navigates you somewhere and then you go somewhere else and like.
Yes. I think life is like that. And I think, and I put that in the book about not knowing, sometimes you don't know. And that sort of gives you the permission to try something and fail or make a mistake. I think we're very scared of making a mistake and doing the wrong thing. Me personally, I find it difficult to make a decision because, oh gosh, is it the right decision or is it the wrong decision? And sometimes it doesn't matter if it's the right or the wrong decision. I mean, obviously with some really big stuff it does, but often with other things, any decision's a good decision. And if it's the wrong one and you make a mistake, then you can, it will lead you to something else. But you kind of got to have faith in yourself that will happen. And it's definitely happened for me.
Mm-hmm. What is a midlife confession that you're currently navigating right now?
Oh, a midlife confession. What would be my confession that I'm trying to navigate? Gosh, that's a hard one. Midlife. Let me think. Gosh, I don't think I should have lots, shouldn't I? What's your midlife confession? I'm throwing it out at you.
Oh, that's a great question, because now you got me. I'm like, I would probably say right now I'm like confessing that I'm embracing my body in a whole completely different way right now with where I'm at in the stage of life. My body is doing something different than what I had thought it should have done, but I'm also trusting that it's also working itself out in a different way. Yeah. But it feels very uncomfortable right now. I'm like, I don't know what I'm looking at, but I'm trying to also love this stage of life, but also what's happening.
I know I have friends. This is why it's really great if you have older friends, because I have older friends and you hit 40, you hit 50. And I was talking about being in my early 50s and how your body does change, and the wardrobe that you have of clothes, they don't work anymore. It's not that they necessarily don't fit, but they're either too short or they're too tight, or the straps are too small or whatever. And I was like, gosh, this is what it's like in your 50s. And my friend's like, you wait till you get to your 70s. That's when the wheels really fall off. And we laughed about it. And I put a lot of that stuff in my book when Nell looks in the mirror and she's like, oh, it's happened. My arms are gone. And it's that whole thing about, what am I going to wear now? Because it's a whole different ball game. Mm-hmm. But I think that's just, isn't that just the process of life that just carries on and
Yes. And I like how you mentioned clothing, because I just had that experience, a few weeks ago, where the outfits that I wore, even a few years ago that I loved, it wasn't feeling good in my body anymore. And so I had the opportunity to find different things that a few years ago I wouldn't have liked, but now I'm like, okay, this suits me and it feels good with where I'm at right now.
Yeah, no, I think, you always have your sort of go-to pieces that you might have worn for things. And when they don't work anymore, you have to kind of go out there and sort of reinvent yourself, really. Find a whole new wardrobe that you're comfortable with, that works for you. And I think instead of mourning the loss of the stuff that you used to be able to wear, you should celebrate a new exciting chapter of new stuff that you're going to wear. You get a chance to buy a whole new wardrobe.
Yes, cheers to reinventing and celebrating yourself. Hear, hear.
Exactly.
We're going to take it to the inner child question segment.
Okay.
Are you ready? First question. When you were a kid, how did you view someone who was currently your age?
I would have thought they were just so old. I would have thought somebody my age was very old and would feel completely differently to me as a child. And I do remember my parents telling me when I was small, you don't feel any different. You look in the mirror, you get a shock because you're like, oh my gosh, but you don't feel any different than when you were much younger. And that absolutely is true. I mean, sometimes I can be driving in my car and I kind of forget how old I am. I'm like, am I 36? Am I just kind of forget because it's kind of not relevant, is it anymore, really, how old you are? I mean, it's just a number. I remember when I was traveling around India and I met a woman and we were talking with a translator and I did ask how old she was and the translator, she answered and he translated and she said, I don't know how old I am. She said, I just lead a good and happy life. And I thought, wow, that is so liberating. But yeah, no, I definitely used to think that that someone my age was old. different.
But you do feel the same age.
You absolutely feel the same age. I think there is always that little kid inside of you. There's that 18-year-old, there's that 21-year-old, there's that 30-year-old. They're all inside of you. It's like having a car, isn't it? It's just the body gets a bit rusty. It's still a car, it's still driving you around.
Like you got to grease the wheels a tad different.
Exactly. And then you become a classic.
Ooh. See, I like vintage cars. So yes.
Well, isn't that the irony? We like vintage everything, vintage clothes, cars. We love, old wines, a mature cheese, antiques. We walk around museums and say how wonderful all these old things are. Yet humans, we get older and we're supposed to look younger. It's doesn't make sense.
I love how you brought that because that's very thought provoking. Of absolutely, we do love all those old things, yet we have a hard time embracing age and ourselves and like the growth of our body and our hearts and our mind and whatever that looks like.
So yeah, no, I mean it's something I think about a lot and I write about it a lot, and I try and write about it with humor. But I very much, I mean, there is a scene where Nell says, "I'm going to look at my body like it's a museum," and I would walk around a museum and look at all the old things and marvel at how amazing they are. Why can't I marvel at my body? That it's still here. 40 years later, 50 years later, still. And it's definitely something I think about a lot. I traveled to Italy this year and walked around Pompeii. It's full of tourists. We're all going, gosh, this is amazing. It's thousands of years old. So let's look in the mirror and say, wow, this is amazing. I'm this 40 years old or 53 years old or whatever. This is amazing. I'm still here. I'm still vibrant. I'm still relevant. I'm still, touch wood, healthy. Something to celebrate.
Yes. What would you say is the oddest food combo that you liked and tried, or you have just tried?
Do you know what I have just tried? I'm staying with my sister, and believe it or not, I have never tried Marmite. And it's a very, have you heard of Marmite? Marmite is a very English thing, and it's a jar of yeast extract that sort of tastes, I'm a vegetarian, and it tastes beefy and salty, and I've always thought, oh no, but it's a vegetarian. It's just yeast. And so I made some buttered toast and I put a little bit of Marmite on top. I can't believe I've got to this age without ever trying it, and it was the most delicious thing. So that's the most recent thing I've tried that was kind of a weird combo.
I have never tried that.
called Marmite, and apparently you either love it or you absolutely hate it.
Okay, so you love it, and I'm going to try it, and I'll let you know, and anyone else who wants to join and try this delicious or interesting treat, whatever you decide.
Yes. I think it divides people.
But it's a conversation, so that will be fun.
Exactly.
Before we end today, Alexandra, what advice can you give our listeners and viewers on living a creatively abundant life?
I love this question. I definitely think for me, it's about opening your eyes and looking around you and listening and just observing life. And because life is creation, and there's so many things around. And always as a child, I was very creative, and I lived in a very creative house. My dad was creative, my mum, my sister, and it's always been something like, it's fall and the leaves are on the ground, and I would always pick up a yellow and a red and an orange, and and sort of make a little collage with them. And I think living an abundantly creative life is about looking around you always, because there is so many creative things around you. And for me, it would be anything, whether it's just kind of making a photo album or drawing or writing stories, or even if you're writing an email to someone, making it funny. And cooking, very creative. Gardening, I'm really into gardening. I'm a Taurus, and I think we're very creative. But there are so many things that you can do and live an abundantly creative life, while you just have, you don't have to be an artist or a writer or a poet you can be creative in all aspects of your life. And I think there is so much joy that you get from creating. And I know that sort of society definitely doesn't sort of like put enough money into the arts and doesn't celebrate creativity enough, because I think that's what gives you joy in life. It really does. It's, we just had some friends here at the house last night, and my friends, she was singing, and so we were all singing along, and then you were dancing, and that's creating, and there's so much joy in that. And yeah, some friends of mine the other day made a short film, 90 minutes long. We all went round there, we watched the movie, we popped open a bottle of Prosecco and celebrated they'd made this film, and it was fantastic. And you can do it on your it was all done on their iPhone. Mm-hmm. So I think it's being open to things, and taking a moment like we've been talking, to sort of think about stuff. But yeah.
Thank you so much for joining us today. Congratulations on your release.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I love the cover.
It is beautiful. And I have to say, like, when your publicist agent sent me this and was like, would you like to have her on? Yeah. The title all by itself intrigued me, as well as the cover. And then just having the time to get to know you today has been an absolute pleasure.
Oh, it's been wonderful. Thank you so much. Thanks for having me on. It's been wonderful.
Welcome. Where can our listeners and viewers find you after the show if they have any questions about?
So they can definitely find me on social media. I have an Instagram, which is my name, Alexandra Potter. And I love engaging with readers on my Instagram page. I'm also on Facebook under the same name. I used to be on Twitter, but I'm not really a Twitter person. So, but that's definitely how you can get hold of me.
I'm right there with Twitter. I have no idea what's happening.
No, Twitter has never really been my thing. I tell you why I always loved Instagram, because I'm very visual, and I used to love taking pictures, and And so I loved putting pictures up there of all kinds of things. And then it really evolved into me talking about my books, and I did a little creative writing thing during the pandemic, and I love it that it's very accessible for readers to be able to contact me, because back in the old days when I used to write, there was no way for people to connect, and I really like that about Instagram.
The connection aspect nowadays is fabulous.
Yeah, no, it's really fabulous, and I think if you're wise and you use it wisely, it's a very positive thing.
Thank you so much for being here. We will put the links down in the comments below so that you can reach out to Alexandra. And thank you again for those who've joined us live and will watch on the replay. Remember, as you go about the rest of your day, to find the things that are working for you. You are the creator of your own story. What steps are you going to take next? Thank you, Alexandra.
Thank you.
Everyone.
Bye.
Have a beautiful week.